I'm going to discuss the digital signal processing, or DSP chain, at the receiver of a coherent optical transmission system. So I'll start with a description of what goes on in commercial systems. And the systems I'm going to be discussing are DP, or dual-polarization, QPSK, or four-level phase shift keying. So the first step is that we take our digitized signal and we normalize it. Very important to normalize it. For instance, if we have any known problems with our front end, like if there's IQ skew or if there's an imbalance in the photodiodes, we can correct those right away. It also basically operates on the manipulated spectrum. We're going to see lots of manipulations that we're going to be doing later on in this DSP chain, but this normalization is the easiest one. And it's important to do the normalization because a lot of the steps in the DSP that follow are sort of optimized to run well on a certain range of values. And so we're going to put everything in the correct range for these operations. The next step is chromatic dispersion compensation, or CDC. Chromatic dispersion is a wideband, frequency-dependent phase distortion, which happens after long propagation in an optical fiber. So this is a deterministic impairment, which is quite straightforward to correct in digital signal processing, and in fact has been one of the sources of revolution to go from analog or fiber dispersion compensation into digital chromatic dispersion compensation. Now this requires the full spectral range, so we're not going to limit the spectrum in any way before we go into the CDC. The next item in the DSP chain is clock recovery. Once we've compensated for dispersion, we've brought our pulses back into the normal shape that they had at transmission, we can now do clock recovery. This is going to extract the optimal sampling time. Remember, we said that we're going to work with a linear sampling receiver, and this sampling receiver needs to know the right sampling time, so we have dedicated circuits in a commercial system that will recover the timing. And so this outputs synchronized samples, just like we saw in our linear sampling receiver. Now these operations generally take place at 2 samples per symbol. Especially for clock recovery, it's like really important that we have at least 2 samples per symbol to make sure that we can get very robust recovery of the timing. The next step in this commercial system is what we call multiple input, multiple output, or MIMO processing. And we'll get into MIMO processing a lot more later on in some later lectures, but for now I just want to mention that there's sort of 2 varieties of MIMO. It could be fractionally spaced adaptive filtering, and that would be the case where it's running at something like 2 samples per symbol. But in the case of MIMO, it doesn't have to be at 2 samples per symbol if I have good clock recovery. So I can also do symbol-spaced adaptive filtering. And that's really important if I'm running at very fast baud rates, that I can more easily, or at less consumption of energy, run my digital signal processing in the MIMO. Now, most MIMO algorithms which are used in DP-QPSK will adapt the taps in this adaptive filter, which is what is represented by this box. We'll use a blind algorithm so that there's very limited overhead and that I can push through my data with a limited overhead. The next block in the DSP chain, as we move along the chain, is the frequency offset estimation, the FOE. Now, I have 2 lasers in a coherent detection system. I have the laser which is used at the transmitter to modulate the data onto light, and at the receiver I have another local oscillator, another laser, whose role is to beat against the incoming signal and to also amplify the signal with its power. So there's many roles for the local oscillator. And this local oscillator and the transmitting laser are nominally on the same wavelength. They're designed to operate on the same wavelength. But of course, there's drift in physical devices, and it's possible that these 2 lasers are not actually at the exact same wavelength. So frequency offset estimation is a way of finding that difference and correcting for it. The last box in my digital signal processing chain is the carrier phase estimation, or CPE, that we see here in this box. This is very important to track the phase. This is what we're going to be talking a lot more about in other lectures, is how the laser itself has some inherent deviation in the phase. And because of this deviation, it's important that we track it and remove it so that we can examine directly the data whose information is encoded in the phase. So once we have tracked the phase from the laser drift and estimated it, then we apply a correction factor to remove it. So once all of these steps are done, oh, by the way, these are generally done at 1 SPS, all these last ones. So the FOE and the CPE operating at 1 sample per symbol. Once this is done, the commercial system kicks out the test statistic. Remember, this all goes back to our linear sampling receiver. I had some filter at the beginning. The output of the filter is sampled in time. I have a test statistic, and the test statistic is compared with a threshold, and I come out with my decision. So in this digital signal processing chain, it's what's happening between these points. That's what this chain is all about. And we can, of course, the clock recovery is the most obvious one where I'm doing here, but there's other manipulations that are the equivalent of just a linear receiver, linear signal processing. So it outputs a test statistic. That statistic is used to make a decision, whether it's a threshold or whatever method is being used for the symbol decisions. And after that, of course, forward error correction will also be applied. So I started my discussion of the signal processing chain with a discussion of the commercial version. Now I'm going to take a step back and say, what happens if you're in a teaching or a research laboratory where it's not a commercial packaged finished system that's being mass produced, but you're trying to run some experiments? What changes in this scenario? Well, the first change is that we typically have no significant fiber propagation. So I might take out the CDC. Above all, now I'm taking it out just to concentrate on some other aspects that I'd like to concentrate on. Of course, we can leave it in there if we're actually running an experiment where fiber propagation is important. But assuming for now that we're looking at some other aspect of the communications system, we would not necessarily have to have CDC. So that's one change when there's no fiber propagation. But the biggest source of challenge in working in a teaching and a research laboratory is that I have no dedicated clock recovery system. So because of this, I have to find my own homegrown solution. And this will make deviation between what is the teaching digital signal processing chain versus the commercial one. The normalization is the same. I'll do the same thing that they would do in a commercialized system. That part doesn't change. So what am I going to do because I have no clock recovery circuit? I have no dedicated hardware to help me do the clock recovery because I'm in a teaching or a research laboratory, and I'm going to vary all kinds of parameters. It's not a closed system where I can have a dedicated clock recovery. So I'm going to use digital signal processing, in fact, to recover the timing. And I'll be talking about that in later lectures. But this is the reason that we're going to perturb this chain when we're doing work in the laboratory. Of course, another difference between a commercial system and a teaching or research laboratory is that when I kick things out, what I'm really looking at are performance metrics, and not just putting out the test statistic. I want to be able to put out manipulations on that test statistic. What if I use, what is the bit error rate? What is the signal to noise ratio? What's the error vector magnitude? All kinds of different performance metrics that I might want to apply. In a commercial system, I don't use metrics. I just kick out the decision. Once the decision is out, my task is over. But in the teaching laboratory, I will make the decision, but then I want to look at the quality of that decision, the quality of my DSP chain. What can I do that might be better? In fact, that's what research is all about, is changing the way we process the data to see if we can improve on the performance metrics. So bit error rate is, of course, the gold standard, one of the metrics we'll kick out, but there are many other signal metrics we could also examine. So how do we modify the DSP chain? Here, MIMO, well, I have no CDC or clock recovery, so MIMO's going to move closer to the normalization. And in fact, MIMO is going to be what acts not only as an equalizer. In a commercial system, the role of MIMO processing is to equalize the signal, to treat distortion and eliminate distortion to the extent possible. However, in the teaching lab, I'm going to exploit this signal processing block to also give me timing recovery. So the frequency offset estimation before, it was enough to put it after I did my distortion, elimination of distortion in MIMO. But that was when I had perfect timing. Now the MIMO's got to find that timing for me, and so I have to help it. And one way that I help it find better timing is correcting for that frequency offset estimation earlier. And it's quite simple to do that. We'll be looking at the algorithm to do it. But this moving does not really increase any way the complexity of the system, but it does make the performance and the timing recover better as it comes out of the MIMO. The last steps, as I mentioned, is the carrier phase estimation, compensation, and then the creation of the metrics. And so pay attention to the color coding I've used here. These are run at least 2 samples per symbol, but these last two, just like in a commercial system, they're done at 1 sample per symbol. Now, actually, in the teaching lab or the research lab, we have a lot of flexibility on what we can do on this sampling. And we might, I call it X samples per symbol. For instance, I might choose X to be as large as possible. I have certain limitations in the laboratory. I have a sampling rate for my real-time oscilloscope as fast as it can go. I can't go any faster, it's maximum rate. And I'm sending data at a certain rate. But suppose I'm sending data fairly slowly, then perhaps I could have several samples per symbol. In that case, why not use them? Because it's going to allow me to have better signal processing. I'm going to be a more accurate estimation of the frequency offset. I might be able to correct a bit more the distortion because I have more visibility into the distortion from the oversampling. So that might be more complex than a commercial system, which would limit it only to 2 SPS for economic reasons. But it might be that in my teaching, I'm trying to focus on another effect, and I don't want to see the distortion introduced here. So I might, want to use those extra SPS to eliminate something, a distortion. So there may be a reason that in the research lab or the teaching lab, I'm going to use higher XPS. Or it may be that I want to come up with a research result where I want to say, hey, I use the same 2 samples per symbol that a commercial system used, and whatever you did afterwards is working better. So it might be important to choose an industry standard. But both are options and something we can choose when we work in the teaching lab or the research lab. So because of this, resampling may be a step that has to be done somewhere in this chain depending on the choices I make on the number of samples per symbol. So as I look at this DSP chain, I'm going to start with a single polarization. So in the examples I'm going to be following up with, I want to just strip away some complexity, concentrate on some of the things that are going on inside of these without having to worry about the dual polarization example. So if I pass from dual polarization to single polarization, then it's not really multiple input, multiple output, it's single input, single output, and we would tend to refer to this rather as the CMA, the algorithm that's used in this, actually in both situations, but here it's the simpler version of it, the CMA, or constant modulus algorithm. So in the following lectures, I'm going to be talking about the 3 most important blocks that you see here in this digital signal processing chain. I'm going to talk about the frequency offset estimation, constant modulus algorithm that does both equalization and timing recovery, and then finally the carrier phase estimation.